I want to run through some of the SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, some possibilities. What could really happen here? Well, number one, we could have Trump holds the nomination open, right? We already know that that is very unlikely to happen, but there are still people out there, especially on Twitter, who are saying this should be the strategy. Trump should wait. We're not going to nominate anybody. We're not going to, argue about it because the election is 43 days away, because Justice Ginsburg had already requested that we hold this seat open for the foreseeable future, and we just should wait. It's just too close. Let the American people decide. Does that sound anything like Donald Trump? Like, would he ever do that? If he saw an opening, do you think that he would just say, you know what, I want to be a fair player and be a good sport on this thing. I'm not going to nominate anybody. The answer is absolutely not. That is not Trump's personality. That is not how he runs his administration. That's not how he runs his life. And when he sees an opening and he sees his enemy sort of weak, he is going to crush them. That's just his disposition. And so I never held really any hope that he was going to hold the nomination open. I think that also would have been a major problem for him just in terms of politics, rallying the base. What if you had Trump's entire base who saw him sitting on his hands and not doing anything to nominate somebody who, the conservatives and the Republicans really want this position filled, and Trump's just like, no, I'm not going to do that. Do you think that those people are going to be running to the polls to support him in November? I certainly do not. And also, I think a lot of these other commentators are missing the point. If we have a 4-4 Supreme Court and we have an election problem that requires involvement from the Supreme Court, and we have the ability for a tie, Judge Roberts sides with the left, sides with the liberals, it's now 4-4. We are smack dab in the middle of a constitutional crisis. So that does not make any sense that he would do that. So we have some other options. And I think number two is where we're looking at. We've got a scenario in which Trump appoints somebody and the Senate actually confirms them before the election. So that's scenario number two. And it looks like we're getting pretty close to that, which is why we're gonna dive into that. I've got a couple of the different breakdowns of the senators and a couple of the different candidates, and the numbers just the numbers look good for the Republicans, look good for the conservatives, and for the president. So we'll see how that plays out. We have another scenario, a third scenario, where Trump appoints somebody, but the Senate does not confirm him or her before the election, and then Trump wins. Or the same situation, but the Senate does not confirm, and then Trump loses. All right, so let's talk about each one of those. So if in all these different scenarios, in scenarios 2, 3, and 4, if Trump appoints somebody or nominates somebody, then this is all going to go back to the Senate. Remember, we just went through this with Kavanaugh. We had the Senate Judiciary Committee. They did their grilling of him. They were accusing him of all sorts of, weird sex crimes and all sorts of, things and misconduct involving Blasey Ford 25, 30 years ago. We just went through this. So this is going to happen again. Now think about all of this, right? If we have Senate hearings in front of the Senate, we are going to have Kamala Harris, who gets called back into the Senate Judiciary Committee. She's a part of that committee. I'm going to explain that here shortly. She has to go back into the Senate, and she has to be sort of involved in all of that. She can't abscond in one of the most important hearings of this, the Senate's history, of the country's history, of the court's history, of the president's history. She's got to be involved in that. Now, from what I have seen on the campaign trail, from the news that I've been following thus far, she has been sort of somebody, not really open to answering a ton of questions. I've seen a number of different press conferences with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris where they don't take any questions. Their schedules are not super full, and they're sort of kind of letting Trump be Trump, and they're thinking they're so far ahead in the polls that they don't need to do much of this stuff. Well, if that changes and Kamala has to get, to go back to the Senate to be involved in the judiciary hearing, then now she has to take the forefront again. And that may not really coincide with what they want to accomplish with the campaign. So she could go in front and she could wow the world. She could go out there and she could lead the charge and she could rally a bunch of senators to sort of squash this nominee, and she could come out looking like the hero. Alternatively, she could not be effective at all. She could get out there and she could try to put on a show kind of like she did last time and see that falls flat, in which case now she is sort of an ineffective leader, and that is not a good look for her. So this situation is it could be good for the Biden campaign. It could be not so good for the Biden campaign, but we are going to see. So let's say that Trump does appoint somebody and the Senate confirms that other individual before the election. What happens in that scenario? Well, Trump gets a big win, right? Trump will now have appointed 3 Supreme Court judges to the court, which is a third of all the judges on the bench. That is a huge deal. And many of these individuals are young and they're going to be on the court for a long time. It's going to be seen as a huge accomplishment. But is that really going to sort of encourage his base? Are they going to be fired up, or are they going to be sitting on their hands because they feel like they've already won and maybe they don't show up to the polls? Conversely, this could be a situation where the Democrats and the liberals are furious over the fact that they rammed through a SCOTUS judge with 43 days left, and they get punished massively at the polls. So if Trump gets somebody through and nominates them and they get confirmed, it's kind of a dicey situation, but he does look like he is going to attempt to do that. Another scenario would be that Trump appoints somebody, but the Senate does not confirm them before the election. So what if that happens? Well, we go back again to the 4-4 scenario. We go back to a situation where a Supreme Court could be split. If there are any election issues that need to be litigated in court, now we've got a broken Supreme Court. We could be in the middle of a constitutional crisis. This could be a major problem. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but it is a possibility. Now, what happens if Trump wins the election? If Trump appoints somebody, the Senate does not confirm them, and then Trump loses the election. What happens here? Well, now we have a lame duck period. We have a period of time from November when we know that Trump, hypothetically loses, up until January 20th when Biden would get inaugurated. So we have a window from November, December, and early part of January where there's a lame duck presidency, where the president is still the president and the Senate is still the Senate, and we still have the ability to nominate and appoint somebody. So what would happen in that situation? Would the senators who were the Republicans who may not be supporting the nominee at this point, would they come back and support Trump and nominate this person in the lame duck portion of the final days of this administration? Or would they wait? Would they just say, nope, we're not even going to touch this thing because they know they're going to get punished at the polls later? So a lot is potentially going on here. And we have all, this is just 4 that came up right off the top of my head, but we have all sorts of other variables and permutations that could be here. So for example, what if Trump wins, Trump appoints somebody, Trump loses, and we also lose the Senate, or Trump wins, but we lose the Senate, or the Republicans lose the Senate. I'm saying we, but I mean the Republicans, the conservatives. If they lose the Senate, that would be something that introduces even more variables. So there's a lot of permutations here, but the one that we're looking at most closely here is it looks like number 2. Trump is going to appoint somebody, and based on the numbers, Trump may also be able to get that individual appointed.